Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be going step by step in a tutorial on how to model this laundry detergent soap bottle. I know this isn't the most interesting thing to model, but it is a part of a scene that I am creating. If you have not already seen that playlist, we'll also be kind of touching the high to low bake process. So before we get into the tutorial today, I do want to make a couple of announcements. The first announcement is, as soon as this video reaches either 100 views or receives 20 likes, whichever comes first, I'll be posting the high poly and low poly models of the laundry detergent bottle on CG Trader for free. If you take a look at my CG Trader, you'll also see some of the other models we've created on this channel, so feel free to take a look around at that. And last but not least, if you have not, please subscribe to the channel. It is just another way to show that you support what I do. And let's jump right in. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to View, Image Plane, Import Image, and I'm going to import the front image of the laundry detergent bottle that I have. I don't have a side image, but I do have a front image, and I'm going to do that in the front plane. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and scale this up by pressing R on the keypad, and then we're just going to bring it up so that it is sitting on the x-axis. I'm going to try to line it up as best as I can right in the middle. And then over on the right hand side in the channel box editor, I'm going to, with my reference image selected, change my alpha gain to a lower number. This is going to decrease the brightness of the image. And with the image still selected, I'm going to go down to layers, create layer from selected, and make this a reference layer with the image inside so that we're not, moving the image around as we model. I'm going to give the reference image a little bit more brightness, and now we're all set up. Alright, so starting with a cylinder, we're going to move the cylinder up to the neck of the bottle and then just kind of scale it to match the size of the neck of the bottle. You can switch to wireframe mode here, shortcut the number 4 on your keypad so you can just kind of see right through it as you adjust your scale. Now going into vertex mode, I'm going to select the bottom row of vertices. I'm going to scale those out. So now going into face mode, I'm going to select the middle row of faces and bottom row of faces. Then I'm going to deselect that top row of faces so it's no longer selected and delete out that bottom row of faces. I know that was a lot of row and faces, but that is what we just did, just to delete out the bottom, and then we're going to do the same thing to delete out the top. Okay, so I'm going to go into the front view. I'm going to go into edge mode. I'm going to double click the very bottom edge of this neck, and then holding shift and right click on our mouse, I'm going to go to extrude edge. Alright, we're going to hit this little power symbol looking thing, and we're going to pull this edge down to that kind of next lip, and then we're just going to press R and scale that out. Alright, and with that same edge selected, we're just going to extrude again, and this time bringing the edge all the way to the bottom of the bottle. Okay, so we're just going to zoom out here, and then we're going to go to insert edge loop. We're going to do that by going to the same menu we went to get to extrude edge, so holding shift and right click on our mouse. And instead of going to insert edge loop tool, we're actually going to select the square right next to it so we can get to the settings. Alright, here in the option box, we're going to go to reset tool, and then we're going to start inserting edge loops on the mesh. We're going to insert a couple here where we see kind of this inset of the handle. Going to do the same kind of thing to the bottom, since these are going to be necessary to build out the handle. And then going into vertex mode, I'm going to select all of these vertices. Now holding D on the keypad and using the middle mouse button, I'm going to move the pivot to the right hand side of these vertices. And then clicking R, we're just going to scale them out. Cool, now let's just see what this looks like in the other views by pressing spacebar. Not too shabby. It does need some overall adjustments to the curvature, so just gonna tackle that. Going back into the front view and going into vertex mode, just gonna select some of these rows of vertices and scale them out appropriately. And then again, going to insert edge loop, gonna go ahead and insert some edge loops into places where we need more curvature or more shaping. And then here's just a fun game of going back and forth between vertex mode, face mode, making some manual adjustments to where these vertices are so it helps with the overall shape of the bottle. Alright, here I'm just going to speed the video up just a tad, really just using the same process of inserting edge loops and moving vertices around to help build the shape of the bottle. Okay, we finally made it to a point that I am satisfied with the shape of the overall bottle, so I want to go ahead and move on to the handle. You may notice the model going in between smooth and unsmooth. You can simply do that by clicking the number 3 on your keypad. Now going into front mode to work on the handle. I see some small adjustments I want to make, so let me just do that really quick. Alright, so now at the bottom I'm just going to select where I believe the handle meets. You'll want to make sure you're in face mode for this. And then I'm just going to delete those faces by selecting backspace on the keypad. Cool, and then the same thing for the top, just select the faces that I believe meets the handle, deleting them out, and then make some small adjustments here. Alright, now if you are still following along as we continue to move these vertices into place, don't get discouraged if our bottles don't look 100% the same. That is completely okay. That's one fantastic thing about art. We all kind of have our own fingerprint. So, not to mention this thing is just gonna look ugly for a while, man. It gets worse before it gets better. So. Alright, just gonna take a look around the mesh again, making sure things look okay. gonna go to edge selection. I'm going to select the edges at the bottom of the handle, and then holding shift and right click on our mouse, we're gonna go to extrude edge. Selecting that little power symbol, we're gonna go ahead and pull these edges out to the edge of the bottle. Going to vertex mode to get these lined up. And then holding shift and right click on your mouse, we're gonna go to insert edge loop, and we're gonna insert an edge loop right here in the middle. Realizing I need to insert an edge loop on the other side as well, I'm gonna go to perspective view and insert an edge loop in the middle on the other side. Cool, now I can select both of those vertices and pull them down. Alright, just taking a look around the mesh, things are looking a little faceted. We have some shading in odd places and the curvature is a bit off, but we're going to worry about that a little later. Just still want to work on the block out of this shape, and then we'll fix those issues here in a bit. Okay, again, going to edge mode or edge selection mode, we're going to go ahead and continue building out the handle. Grabbing these edges, holding shift right click and extruding to get that build out. So as we're selecting these edges and extruding them, we're creating new vertices and edges. So these new vertices are no longer connected to the vertices on the mesh, and we're going to want to get those connected by snapping them. You can snap vertices to other vertices by holding V on your keypad and moving them to the location of the other vertex you would like to snap it to. And then one more thing to keep in mind is that once you snap these vertices to each other, that does not mean they are merged or combined into one vertex. So you're going to want to make sure you are doing that on both sides as well. Okay, so now we're going to work our way to the top of this handle, holding shift right click on our mouse to extrude out the edge to take form or formation shape of the handle. As you extrude this edge, keep in mind the edges on the left hand side. We are going to have to bridge these edges together, so making sure that we have an equal amount of edges on the side of the handle, right and left sides, is going to make our lives easier when it comes to bridging these things together. So while in edge mode, we are going to go into our perspective view, and we are going to start bridging these edges together. So to bridge, you can find that in the same little shortcut menu we've been going to by holding shift and right click on your mouse. You'll need to select the two edges that you'll be bridging, and then you can get to that shortcut to bridge them together. So now that we have the top of the handle bridged so that it's closed, we can move these vertices in place. We can also continue to bridge the handle, making sure that we close off these open areas. So again, to get to the bridge, you'll want to select the two edges you're bridging, hold shift, right click on your mouse, and you should see bridge down in the bottom menu. The overall front shape of this bottle is looking alright, so let's continue to insert edge loops to further the shape of our bottle. As I continue to select edges and bridge them, I love to make sure I stay in quads. Quads make it a lot easier to smooth the object at the end in comparison to triangles. So quads 4 size, triangles 3. Just makes it a lot easier to smooth. But triangles are okay too, I mean. Okay, we are continuing to make our way down the shape of the handle. So here it may not look like I'm choosing any function, but I'm actually pressing G on my keypad to repeat the last action. The last action here being extrude on these edges for the handle. So each time that I press G on the keypad, it is repeating that extrusion, and you can do that for any action that you want repeated. And here's where we begin to tackle underneath the handle. This part was a little complicated for Alright, over this next moment, it's just going to be a lot of trial and error, moving vertices around, extruding edges, bridging them together. This handle has a very unique shape, the way that it comes off of the bottle, so making sure that I captured that with the edges and the vertices proved to be a little more complicated than I anticipated. Eventually, I did decide to just focus on the front half and that I would mirror the front half to the back half once I was done. I got tired of trying to go into perspective mode and do what I was doing on the front to the back, so that was my ultimate decision as I was going through this process. I'm just gonna let this next part play out. Feel free to slow this part of the video down if you would like. I won't be talking too much as I go through the process of trying to fix up the rest of the shape of the mesh. Okay, we finally reached the part where I'm gonna go ahead and mirror the side that I like over to the side that I don't like. So I'm going to go to the top view, I'm going to go into face mode, I'm going to select that top half, the part that I don't want, and I'm going to delete that part. Okay, after deleting that, I'm going to center my pivot, freeze my transforms, and delete my history. I just want to give it a quick check before I mirror it over to the other side. I want this side to look at its best so that when I mirror it over, I don't have to do that too many more times. So since I'm in perspective mode and I kind of want to move these vertices around, I'm going to take advantage of something called edge slide. So edge slide is actually going to allow me to select vertex or vertices and move them along the surface of a mesh. And so this tool is useful for when you already have a bunch of vertices and you want to move them without breaking the curvature of the surface. So this is a pretty neat non-destructible way to manipulate the vertices on your meshes. Okay, continuing to make my way around this front side of the bottle, making adjustments where I see fit. Now I'm going to go into top view and I'm going to select the row of vertices at the top. I'm going to press R on the keypad and I'm going to smash that yellow box with the line up towards the blue one. This is going to straighten out that line of vertices. Next, holding V on the keypad, I'm going to move the pivot to that line of vertices, or basically to the middle of our mesh. Okay, now we're going to go up to edit. We're going to go down to duplicate special. We're going to click the little square over on the right hand side to get to the option box. And we are going to be duplicating our mesh in the Z axis. So we're going to have to change the Z axis field to a -1. And it looks like I actually might have changed the Y field to -1. So let me go back up here, change the Z to -1. That's going to be the third box. Now we're going to take both sides of the mesh and we're going to go up to mesh combine. This is going to allow us to merge the middle vertices to make this one mesh. Got that pesky little crease there in the middle. Just going to hit 3 on the keypad for smooth preview. Alright, on this middle edge here, I just want to add a bevel by holding shift, right click, and bevel. Hoping this will help smooth that area out. This area is looking a little tight. I'm going to remove one of these edges here by double clicking the edge and control delete. Gonna make some more tweaks to the handle. I'm also seeing some things I can do to improve the side. It's really just an everlasting battle of going back and forth into all of your views and making sure things are looking realistic. And here's where you will start seeing me remove some of these edge loops, so that we can get a smoother experience around the bottle. As I mentioned earlier in the video, things looked a little faceted, there was shading in weird areas, and that's because the curvature was off. That can happen when you have a lot of edges and vertices pulling your mesh in different directions and kind of messing up the surface. So removing some of these edges allows for the mesh to calculate smoother angles in between edges that are further apart. And as I mentioned, same thing for vertices. As much as you can, combining these vertices and placing them in a more average area will allow for a smoother experience around the bottle, avoiding some of those artifacts and shading that you see. Throughout the next little bit, you'll see me continue to remove edges and combine vertices where I'm seeing weird shading or artifacts to kind of smooth out the bottle. The main thing I like to tell myself is if that edge or that vertex or vertices is not helping with the actual curvature of my mesh, it has to go. It's really just there for no reason. Oddly enough, with this model, I actually started high poly and then decided to go low poly. So that was really interesting. I usually start with the low poly model as a block out and then eventually start getting more geometry on the model. But this time I noticed the reverse. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, not too bad. It's looking a lot better than it did before. So now I'm going to focus in on bridging the edges at the bottom of the bottle to close out that open area. The edges of this is looking very soft, but we'll fix that later with a bevel. So let's just continue closing off the bottom. Okay, so now we're going to select all of the edges at the bottom and around the bottle. And then of course holding shift, right click on the mouse, we're going to go to bevel. Just going to change the segments to 2 and this is alright. Now you can kind of see that crease that you usually see on a laundry bottle here. The handle is looking a little wonky, so let me go into the front view and adjust where those vertices are. Cool, gonna add a little bevel to the neck. Not bad. Now back to the front view. I'm gonna go ahead and line these vertices up to match this rounded area of the front. We're going to try to extrude this area to create this little crease mark that's here. And just remember, whatever manipulation you do in one view, it's going to affect another view. So whatever you do in the front is going to affect the side, which would affect the top. So we want to make sure that we're checking those views as we continue to move these vertices into place. Okay, so now I am going to use the multi-cut tool to actually cut out this circular shape. I think I've done as much as I can with the vertices that are there. So I'm gonna use the multi-cut tool to kind of help. You can find that tool in the same menu as the extrude, edge loop, etc. Starting here at the very bottom, I'm just gonna start cutting out the shape of this circle. So of course this is going to give us problem geometry like n-gons, and we're going to fix and clean that up later. For now we just want to focus on getting that circular shape. You can press enter once you're done with a line for your multi-cut, and then you can pick it right back up. This works well on this front side. We are going to end up again duplicating over to the other side. So again, we're going to pull out our multi-cut tool and we're going to create another circle inside this circle. Believe it or not, it actually freaks me out when I use the multi-cut tool because of how many n-gons I create. I don't know, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies, but we're going to continue. Now selecting the faces inside of these two circles, we're going to go to extrude and we're going to adjust the offset of this extrusion. 0.4 seems good enough. I'm going to select G on our keypad to repeat the last action, which was extrude. And this time we're actually going to push the extrusion in. just a very small bit so we can see that crease. Not shabby. I'm gonna select this inside edge as well and create a bevel from that to create a crease. And now the work begins of fixing all of our n-gons and making sure that these circular creases we've created in our mesh are smooth along the surface. So okay, so as I continue to clean the mesh and delete out faces, merge vertices, extrude certain areas, insert edge loops where they are needed, etc. To fix these problem geometry locations, I just want to point out one tool that I like to use a lot, and that is average vertices. Now, just like edge slide, average vertices is a very useful and non-destructive tool to use when you have a lot of vertices. You can find the average vertices menu in the same shortcut menu that we've been using all along, holding shift and right click on your mouse. Essentially what average vertices does is it smooths your mesh by averaging the position of your vertices. So say for example I'm in one view, let's say I'm in the front view and I move around some vertices and the vertices look really good in the front view. And then I just so happened to go to the perspective view, and the vertices are placed in the oddest position that you can think of. So it looked great in the front view, and then we went to the perspective view, and for whatever reason, that vertex or those vertices have been placed all in a position that we didn't even want it to be. If you select those vertices that are out and about in an area that you didn't want it to be, and you hold shift right click on your mouse selecting average vertices, this will place those vertices in the average position location relative to the vertices around it. And this is a very helpful tool when you want to make non-destructive movements to your vertices on your mesh. Okay, admittedly, that was a very long cleanup process, but we finally made it to a point where we can duplicate this over to the other side. So we're just going to use our same duplicate special process to get this mirrored over to the other side. Wonderful, now we can work on the cap, which was probably the easiest part of this mesh. Oh wait, got one more piece of problem geometry. Let me fix that really quick. I actually don't think I pointed out how you can see problem geometry. If you actually go up to the mesh cleanup menu, the parts with problem geometry will highlight depending on which options you have selected. Alright, on to the cap. We're going to create a cylinder. We're going to move that cylinder up to the top, scaling it out using R on the keypad to match the shape of the cap in the image. To form the lip of the cap, I'm going to go ahead and insert an edge loop. And then I'm going to select the faces that were created in between that edge loop and the bottom edge loop. Then I'm going to extrude, scaling that extrusion out. I think this will benefit from me taking this roll of vertices and pulling it up, yeah. The lip of this seems a bit too far out, scale it in. Now I'm going to place two close edge loops here. I need to select this row of vertices and bring it up. Okay, now I'm going to go to face mode. I'm going to select these faces. And then I'm going to go to extrude. In the extrude menu, I'm going to turn off keep faces together, and then I'm going to scale those faces in. With those new faces that we've created selected, just gonna go ahead and go to the extrude menu again and extrude those in. Going to put one little edge loop here and bring it up to help shaping out the top. Couple more beveled edge loops to continue building out the top. So as you all can see, our laundry detergent soap bottle is finally complete. I did want to go over a few things before we hop into Substance Painter. So if you look over here on the left hand side in the outliner, you can see that I have 3 different groups. So I'm going to go ahead and hide these last 2 groups. The first group is the low poly hard edge model that we essentially start out with. This is where we left off. This is not in smooth preview. This is essentially what it initially looks like. Now the second group is a white version of that first bottle, and if you also look at it a little closer, you can see that the edges are smooth. So I went ahead and smoothed the edges on this bottle, and it is white because we added an AI standard surface material to prepare it for a substance. So this is what I consider my low poly model, getting ready for the high to low bake. I went ahead and UV unwrapped everything and caught this good as the low poly model. This next group is the high poly model. So if I actually bring back the low poly model and I highlight it, you can see here this model has 2600 triangles. Now if I hide that model and unhide the high poly build, highlighting that, you can see that this model has close to 37,000. It really is just a duplicate of our low poly bake, and then I smooth it out. So in order to get to your smooth, you just select the object, hold shift on your keypad, right click on your mouse, and you should see the smooth option. You actually click on this front and back sticker, they're actually their own mesh. I did that to make it a lot easier when I'm going to be brushing on the label. So the first thing you'll want to do when you're in Substance Painter is you're going to want to upload your low poly model. So we're going to go up here to the top menu, new, or file, new. We're going to go to select. We're going to find our low poly model. We're going to open that up. I'm going to change my document resolution to 2K. Here is our low poly model, looking very jagged and honestly a hot mess, but we're going to fix that with our high poly model. So we're going to go over here under texture set settings. We're going to go down to bake mesh maps and select bake mesh maps. For our output size, again, I'm going to go to 2K. For my high definition meshes here, there's a small little piece of paper looking thing. You're gonna click that and we're gonna upload our high poly model. So now you'll see a cage build up around there. I am going to first of all apply diffusion. My cage I'm going to make automatic experimental. This one seemed to work okay for me, and then I'm going to go ahead and bake the selected textures as we wait. Our high poly mesh has baked onto our low poly mesh. Now you may not be able to see a difference at this current moment, but I'm going to make a few adjustments. First, I'm going to add a few paint layers or a few fill layers to our bottle. Let's just change this color to like a orange, and then I'm gonna add another fill. This is gonna be for the cap. Make that color a blue. Looks okay. All right, so this is our high poly, and I want to show you all the difference between the high poly and the low poly. So if I go back to bake mesh maps and I click this, this is going to bake it without the high poly on top. Go ahead and let that bake. Return to paint mode, and I'm just going to take a screenshot. Okay, now with that screenshot on the left hand side, I'm going to go back to the Bake Mesh Maps menu. I'm going to deselect that box so that our high poly can bake on our low poly. It still has the same settings I set up before. I'm going to bake. Now, when I return to painting mode, we're going to go ahead and take a look at these side by side. So again, on the left hand side, that is our mesh without the high poly bake, and on the right hand side, that is our mesh with the high poly bake. So there's a few key differences you can see in these two models. And so here's where I kind of want to discuss what high to low poly bakes do and what high to low poly bakes do not. So one thing you'll notice around the sticker area here is that darker area, or in other words, the ambient occlusion. The ambient occlusion, of course, is going to be darker the deeper the crevice is, and so that little space between the bottle and the sticker should have some ambient occlusion. So what the high to low poly bake seem to have done is actually smooth that transition out for the ambient occlusion. So it captures the depth and the shadow between the intersecting geometry. Another thing that you'll notice is some of this jagged, faceted areas on that crease that is in the front of the bottle and on the back. In the high to low poly bake, you'll see that that high bake has allowed for a smoother transition on the curvature. So it preserves those soft transitions that will otherwise look very faceted on this low poly model over here on the left hand side. And then another thing that I noticed on the high poly bake is if you actually take a look at this handle and in comparison to the handle here on the left hand side. On the left hand side, you can kind of see the hard edges with those shadows that kind of follow it. So you kind of see it, it's kind of jagged going all the way down. And that is due to the shading and the lighting that is being done onto that model. With those edges. And here on the high poly bake, you can kind of see again that is a smoother transition. The lighting is a lot smoother and more realistic because of the high poly's curvature, and that's being faked on the low poly. So that is what a high to low poly bake does. Now on to what a high to low poly bake does not. If I'm actually going to change this model here on the right hand side to look flat against the background, just like the image here on the left hand side, what the high to low poly bake does not is change the silhouette of the actual model. So as you can see, this same kind of sharp curve that's going on around here on the left hand side is the same kind of sharp curve that's going on over here on the right hand side. So the only time you actually ever see major impact to the silhouette is if you are creating like insected details or inserts, or let's say something was dented or extruded, different grooves. That is the only time you're going to see an actual change to the silhouette when you're doing a high to low poly bake. It's not going to change the overall silhouette of your model. So that's why on models like this simple laundry detergent, you're probably not going to go through a high low poly bake on this. This is probably just going to be what it is. It's going to be in the background, something that's still, but as you can see, this process saves you a lot of space and geometry. That low poly model was only 2,600 triangles in comparison to the high poly model that was, I think, almost 38,000 polygons. All right, and that was pretty much my experiment of the high to low poly bake process. I haven't done it on this channel for any reason. High poly models just look better when you're doing time-lapse video. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it gave you all a better understanding of what the high to low poly bake process is for. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way to show that you support what I do. Thank you, and see you in the next video.